Event marketing can take on many different forms. It's an exceptional way to connect with your target audience, deliver unique experiences, establish thought leadership, or just get rid of a lot of branded pens. When does it make sense to sponsor an industry event versus creating your own? Are we even thinking about event marketing the right way? Marketing and sales are full of myths, misconceptions, and even flat-out lies. Join us as we exchange the echo chamber for a microphone and talk event marketing.
Hello and welcome to the Rethink Marketing Podcast. I'm Colin Jeffries, joined by the eager enveloper of excellent event engagement, the sales legend himself, Nick Smith. How are you today, Nick?
I'm doing fantastic, Colin. So excited for this topic. As somebody who has both attended events and hosted my own events before, this is going to be a really exciting day.
You know, I hope so. Events can be a fantastic source of lead generation, of value creation, but if not done correctly, they can be a huge waste of time and resources.
Oh, absolutely. Nothing is worse than spending weeks, months planning this event, and then you have a bunch of attendees where it's like, none of these people are really relevant to me. I'm not really getting anything out of it. It's really tough work to plan an event and have it be successful.
100%. And just to be clear, there are a lot of opportunities these days to do things like virtual forums, what used to be called webinars, but are now more of, I would say, digital lectures or opportunities to learn virtually, where the overhead cost is substantially lower than renting an event hall or a hotel, buying a block of rooms for your speakers, flying people in from who knows where. So there are a lot of opportunities here that go beyond just the physical event space. But I think right now what we'll really be talking about is that high investment, high payoff physical event space. I have seen a few organizations do virtual roundtables really well, where they get their target market together and they're creating value together, if that makes sense. So it's less about, hey, here's this expert that we have that is teaching, and more about, here are these panelists, so to speak, this group roundtable where everyone's getting together and they're sharing thoughts and they're sharing best practices and different challenges. That can be one way to provide a lot of value. The flip side of that, on the other end of the spectrum, if you will, is here's this guest expert and you have the opportunity to learn from this person, either at an in-person event or, of course, at a virtual event.
I love both of those methods. I've seen them both work out really well. I have a question for you, though, Colin. When does it make sense to plan your own event as opposed to attending somebody else's event?
It's a great question. I think in a lot of instances, that's a million or multi-million dollar question over the course of a couple of years. In my mind, it makes a lot of sense to attend someone else's event when maybe your Rolodex is not that deep. So if the objective is we want to meet new people, we want to build our brand with some sort of other established brand, then it makes a lot of sense to go to another person's event, to sponsor that event in a lot of instances, and really build your book of business. If you are a more established organization, if you're going after perhaps people who don't take time to go to events, I don't know a lot of CEOs, for example, that are carving out a couple of days to fly to Miami for a 2-day conference. There are a lot of salespeople that do that. There are probably a lot of mid-level managers that do that. But if your target audience is CEOs for some reason, then it makes a lot of sense for you to host your own event. If your target audience is, SHRM certified human resources individuals, it makes a lot of sense to, instead of hosting your own event, go to the SHRM National Convention every year. When it comes to hosting your own event, though, what I've seen often pay off is providing a unique piece of value that most of your attendees cannot find elsewhere. Sometimes that is getting them in front of other minimum qualified leads. Sometimes that's getting them in front of their target audience. Sometimes that's giving them a platform to speak and to share their opinion and to become a thought leader. So when we're hosting events, and I just came off of hosting a great event in the Cincinnati region that brought together a lot of healthcare decision makers and healthcare leaders. And the cool thing with that is there were some contacts that I had that I was able to get on panel discussions or get on the keynote panel and things of that nature that gave them a level of credibility and kicked off conversations that I think will be really valuable long term. Now, the flip side of that is if I just went to an event and attended, there's a high likelihood I could have met those people and had some conversations. But instead of me being the one person that reached out to them, that invited them to build their brand and establish thought leadership, now I'm one of 50 people that talked to them at a conference. So there are a lot of benefits of attending conferences, which we talked about in part 1. So if you missed last week's episode, go back and check that out, please. But today we're really focusing on hosting our own events. So Nick, what would you add? What did I miss?
I think it depends on who that target audience is, which you covered, right? If it's somebody who's already going to a well-known established event and you just want to meet as many of those people as possible, just go to somebody else's event. That's great. But if you have this very specific target audience, or maybe there's a specific topic that target audience cares about, and nobody else is hosting an event that covers that in depth, that's a great time to plan your own event. And I love your idea too of giving them some sort of unique piece of value. Something I did in the past, I organized my own event, and we did a panel discussion, but we wanted to involve people from the audience. And so we simulcast it. We had a live event, but we had a way for people online to attend the event as well. And they could type in questions for the panelists. And so we had this live stream of questions coming that we could send to the panelists and say, hey, this is for Joe over here at this company. Hey, what do you think about this specific topic? And the great thing about that is the audience feels like they're participating in the conversation. Even if it's not a round table, they get to ask questions from these experts. And then that stream of questions too, you can package that up as an FAQ, package up the answers, send that out as a follow-up to the event. There's lots of really cool things you can do to give people, this interactive experience and make them feel like, hey, this was a really great experience. This is a really great use of time. I've now got my fingers on the pulse of what everybody else in the industry is thinking about, what their challenges are, what the best practices are. So lots of really cool things you can do with hosting your own event.
Nick, you hit on 2 things that I really want to call out there. Really good points. But one thing that's really fascinating is, and you basically just said this, is when I host an event, I own that media, which means now I have more content for social media. I have more content for my YouTube channel. I have more content for my email blasts. And it gives me a really good opportunity to build out my media library. The second thing that you really hit on is, as a host of an event, I can get in front of my core target audience, the demographic that I really want to learn from, and I can hear what their pain points are in a really non-confrontational way. I'm not coming in as somebody who's trying to market to you or sell to you. I'm coming in as an event host, getting together some of the best minds in whatever business field I'm trying to reach. And then you guys talk about common pain points, existing solutions, maybe even evaluating some of my competitors or my own organization. And that puts me in a really unique position to glean that wisdom and then maybe change my service or change my product or change my billing or change something to really reduce those pain points and meet those needs that I'm discovering.
And you can create so many great evergreen assets after that event with all of that. And you don't even really have to create the material yourself. It's more of a summarization of what happened. What were those panelists talking about? What was the audience excited about? And the amount of credibility that is given to you as an event host, it's really phenomenal. If you organize people, you bring them all together, you summarize everything, you send the information out, you're kind of emceeing the event, people really respect you. They see that you're giving back to the community, and that is just absolutely huge for your personal brand. It's absolutely huge for your the brand of the company. So there's so many great things that come along with it. And also using those assets after the event, it kind of gets people excited for the next event. So I've seen this happen too, where people will spend a ton of time, energy, resources. They'll launch their first event, and maybe it's not as successful as they were hoping for. And so they might give up. But I would challenge them, look at that almost as your first iteration. Plan, do, study, act, right? And so what are the things that you could have learned from that? And maybe try again next year. As you continue to put on events over time, you'll get better and better. And it can actually become a great business development mechanism.
100%. There's so much in there that is rich and valuable. A lot of it is leveraging the scientific method as a marketer or a salesperson, right? Hypothesize, test, iterate, improve. So there's so much there that we can learn from and deliver major value to key stakeholders.
Absolutely. What tips do you have for people who are maybe planning their very first event?
First is get in front of it. Start putting feelers out as early as you possibly can. Hey, target audience member number one, I'm thinking about hosting a panel discussion on this topic. Do you know anybody that would be interested? What do you think? This can be a really good opportunity to get powerful introductions, even if you're just thinking about doing an event. I've met some really, really intelligent people that have provided a lot of education or wisdom or insight just based on, hey, we're thinking about hosting this event. Who do you know that would make a lot of sense? Second thing is, you don't have to do it all yourself. A lot of events attract people who want to build audiences, want to build thought leadership, notoriety, etc. So there might be opportunities for you to say, hey, instead of me planning this entire thing by myself, I'm going to put together a steering committee, and then everybody can share some of the weight. Nick, anything you would add to that?
I've had to do this before. I've had to bootstrap it. And we've talked about this, how resources are limited and events can be very expensive. And so I have leveraged free as much as I possibly could. Figure out who's somebody who wants that target audience, who wants to be affiliated with this event, and see if you can get a venue donated. I've done that before where it's like, hey, I will give you the attendee list. I'll give you a speaking slot. I'll give you something to make it attractive to you if you can donate this venue. Right. And same thing in terms of the speakers. Maybe you have that limited bandwidth. I love where you were going, where you have this event steering committee. That's a great time to engage your strategic partnerships, right? And get them involved. And many times they can dump a bunch of resources into it too and help you out. So those are a bunch of things you can do to help bootstrap it. Absolutely. Looking for sponsors, get out ahead of it as far as you can. All great ideas there, Colin.
Fantastic. The only other thing I would add is be careful not to get distracted. Planning an event and executing a great event can take a lot of effort, a lot of money, a lot of time, resources, and so on. So it can be really challenging to recognize, hey, my day job is this, and then ancillary to that, I'm going to plan this event in my quote unquote free time.
Colin, I absolutely love this. I have a question for you. Is there a go, no go decision that you can set up some way through the early stages of planning? Maybe where you have a decision gate where you end up not over investing your time or resources, or if you see some indication that there's not going to be a return on investment.
Well, I think it's different for every organization and maybe even different for every person. It starts with planning and recognizing our objectives are these. And if you get to a point where it's very clear you're not going to hit those objectives, I think it can make sense to say, hey, we're going to cut our losses and we're going to stop pouring resources into this event. Now, there are various types of events as well. I've worked with organizations and their objective was to spoil their clients. So they flew clients in from all over the country. They did helicopter tours. They did, all sorts of really amazing experiences for those clients. And the likelihood of those clients leaving them is very low anyway. The ROI there is probably extremely low. On the total opposite side of that, I've worked with organizations and their objective is, hey, we're trying to build our brand. We're trying to meet investors. We're trying to meet new clients. We're trying to meet whatever through this event that we're hosting. And they get to a point in time where they realize, hey, it's going to cost us $40,000 to throw this event and do it right. And we anticipate, based on the number of attendees, based on our funnel, et cetera, that really we're only going to get this small number of actual sales out of it. And the return on investment just doesn't make sense. So if the objective is, hey, we have the cash and we're going to spoil our clients, great. There's probably not a go, no go decision there. On the other end of the spectrum, hey, we have this limited capital. It's coming out of our advertising budget. We're measuring our event investment the same way that we measure our Google ad spend or our Facebook ad spend or our billboard budget, right? Those are situations where I think we have to recognize, hey, here are our points of retraction, and then here's our point of no return. Anything you would add to that, Nick?
Nothing to add. I think those are all great considerations. I'd be curious, Colin, as somebody who's both attended events and hosted your own events, is there anything that you've done differently to really set yourself apart?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the event space generally is extremely crowded, and I don't really care what industry that you're in specifically. There are probably a lot of events that are going on. So I have found that events focus on sexy DMAs, if that makes sense, right? Anytime you go to Las Vegas, you can attend an event. There are some really, really common destinations, but there's a level of convenience that I've really tried to play on of, hey, you don't have to fly to Boston and pay Boston hotel prices to go to an event and talk to, healthcare marketing leaders or email marketing leaders or sales leaders or what have you. You can get the same caliber of information, the same caliber of networking at Midwest prices, right? At the prices of Indianapolis hotels or of Columbus hotels, let's say. And so I think that's a distinct piece of value. The other thing is, I hate to be self-centered, but looking at it and saying kind of what's in it for me, recognizing that if you attend an event in an expensive DMA where there are 500 other attendees, you're one of probably 50 to 70 people that are talking to that key decision maker. If you host your own event and you can say, hey, I can get you in front of this really valuable audience, then that can put me in a really good situation where I'm seen as the point of contact, as being really well networked, et cetera, right? The halo effect, if you will, of creating your own event. So I think those are some things that can really help differentiate, less expensive, more accessible, the same great experience, getting in front of a thought leader at an event of 200 people instead of an event of 1,000 people.
Colin, this has been a fantastic conversation. So many great ideas, so many great tips and tricks. Something I really, really valued was the whole thing about involving your partners, even how if you're in the early stages of planning an event, you can use that to broker introductions, even if you end up not going through with the event. So there's so many great things we can do here. Any last words of wisdom before we wrap things up?
Well, Nick, I feel like I monologued quite a bit this podcast, and I apologize for that. So let me actually flip it around to you and say, are there a couple of bullet points that you would throw out to first-time event organizers or maybe people that have been organizing events and they're looking for that next leg up?
Yeah, for me, I've got 3 things here. 1, what's the topic? What's that elephant in the room that nobody else is talking about? And I bet you can find it. Really know your target audience, understand their pain points, understand their challenges, find that thing that nobody else is hosting an event around. And if you can organize around that, that's going to drive engagement. 2, have a really cool title for the event. Titles make a lot of difference. It's a great way of promoting it. It's a great way of creating curiosity. Some sort of provocative language gets eyeballs on it. And then 3rd, that bootstrapping aspect. It doesn't have to be expensive. Ask for volunteers. Ask for people to make donations. Ask for freebies where you can. You'd be amazed at how many people are willing to support you, especially if you've invested in that relationship, if you're making it worth their time, if you can think about how this is going to pay off for them, people will want to support you.
Excellent points. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today on the Rethink Marketing Podcast. Until next time, keep rethinking those common assumptions. I used to believe a lot of myths that hinder marketing.
And I bought into the classic misconceptions haunting sales.
Join us as we escape the echo chamber each week to shed some light on how to interpret sales and marketing advice.
Can't wait until next week for another episode? Visit rethinkmarketingpodcast.com to listen to our archives, connect with us, or request your very own limited edition Rethink Marketing t-shirt.
Until next time, keep rethinking those common assumptions.